Well, Hillary Clinton gets her first security briefing. This comes amid criticism from Donald Trump and other Republicans who say her handling of classified information at the State Department should disqualify her from accessing sensitive intel again. Robin Simcox is a terrorism and national security analyst at the Heritage Foundation. Robin, good of you to join us this afternoon and shed some insights that you may have in terms of your perspective on Hillary Clinton getting her first look at an intelligence briefing. If you can, explain to all of us what she likely saw in that intel briefing.
Well, I think there will be a range of issues that Hillary Clinton would be shown with regards to the threats currently facing the United States today. That could range from the terrorism threat, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Syria, Iraq, Yemen, through to conventional nation states such as Russia, its ambitions in Ukraine and other parts of Eastern Europe, through to cyber, China, hacking, those kind of things. But I think the main focus will be on the terrorism situation and how that impacts the U.S. homeland.
Yeah, and let's talk about the terrorism situation because that does relate to national security, and we've seen the incredible and horrendous sight from ISIS to the promotion of them showing child fighters for ISIS. What does that say to not just Hillary Clinton but Donald Trump and other candidates who are running for president about the scope and magnitude of ISIS being able to reach out and use 12-year-olds?
Well, if we needed any further proof of the depravity and the brutality of this group, here it is, using children to execute people, filming it, distributing it all over the internet. What you're seeing here is the future generation of jihadists. You're seeing mass indoctrination of children. This is why this is a generational war, not just for the United States, but for its allies. Because what we're seeing here is ISIS taking control of territory, families in from all over the world, indoctrinating these families in this kind of ideology, making them commit these kind of heinous acts. And these are the people that, to be frank, the United States is going to be fighting 20, 30 years down the line.
You know, Robin, you look at the atrocities that this group has committed, and of course there's Al-Qaeda and there's Al-Shabaab, which of course is part of the Somalia front, and then there's Al-Qaeda in Yemen. So when you look at all of these groups collectively, you got to ask yourself the question, what is the ideology that's drawing them to the point that they're actually sacrificing their children to be jihadi or radical Islamic fighters?
Well, this is the spread of Islamism, the Islamist ideology which has infected so many countries, especially since 9/11. You look at the range of threats facing the United States today, and you mentioned some of them: Somalia, Yemen, Libya, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Syria, Iraq. I mean, these are overwhelmingly difficult problems for any president to have to deal with, and whoever wins the election in November is going to have to hit the ground running from day one, because the threats are out there, they're real, and they're growing.
They are growing, and it's a daily continuum, if you will, of information that comes in to the current president of the United States, who has to look at this intelligence briefing and realize how ugly the world can be and how sinister people can be. But I got to ask you, when you see this kind of ideology being utilized and drawing people, what's the best way to defeat that ideology? I know there's such a thing as putting boots on the ground and doing it militaristically, but there's also hearts and minds. How do you reach out to these particular people who feel disenfranchised from society, that they would go so far as to commit these kinds of brutal acts? How do you get into their minds, into their hearts, to say this is not the way, there's a better way to our concerns about how we conduct our lives and how the world treats us?
Well, it may be that there's a set of people, the hardcore, who you will never be able to turn away from this ideology. But there are going to be those, and I think this is where the United States, it's very important here that the U.S. sticks to its principles, it sticks to its values, it sticks to the freedoms that we would all enjoy living here every day, and show people that there is a better way, a much better way than the brutality, the violence, the destructiveness, the evil ideology that ISIS pumps out, not just to people in Syria, but pumps out on the internet, tries to get into the lives and the homes of people in the West. We need to, of course, have a military component, but you're absolutely right, Kelly, we need to defeat this ideologically as well.
Well, it's all hands on deck, right? You have to do it not only militaristically, but also in terms of the mind, in terms of the spirit, in terms of the heart. Now, some people might say that's too soft, but I'm not talking about being soft. I'm talking about putting everything in play. I remember covering the Iraq War, and the coalition of the willing, our allied forces, including the United States, Australia, British, and all the other forces that were part of that, they were all talking about we've got to show a strong arm to a strong man because people will acknowledge that, but then we also, in terms of being strength, we have to have some smart power in terms of reaching the hearts and minds of those people. And just as you've said, there will always be people who will stay deeply entrenched in that kind of ideology. We know that they exist, but it's very important that we get the rest of the population to say that is not the way. And it would be good to see those who are moderate to stand up and say this is not a part of our religion, it's not a part of what we do, and we haven't seen enough of that.
Well, and what we need to do with those moderate voices that are out there, we don't always hear about them a lot, but they certainly are out there, perhaps not in the numbers we hope, but the ones that we do have, we need to amplify those voices, show people, show those who are drawn towards ISIS that this isn't the only path they can take, that there are ample opportunities for disaffected Muslims in the United States, in Europe, and that ISIS is not the dominant force. This isn't the future of Islam. There is a better way, and we need to fight to forge that better way.
Robin Simcox, the Heritage Foundation, thanks for joining us. That is only one of the things that the next President of the United States will have to handle when they go into office. Thank you.